we call him an influential freelance CX consultant, but beyond that, he's also somebody who's passionate about leading companies on their CX strategy in terms of measurement and improving employee engagement. He also is excited about employee advocacy techniques and solutions, okay? Ian has worked globally with different organizations, deploying CX tools and methodologies that have been able to not only impact, but transform how organizations are working. He's a renowned speaker, he's a blogger on the subject of CX. So when it comes to this conversation on customer inclusion, I think we have got the best possible lead expert on this. He's certified as a customer experience professional, and I'm sure his resource and history and engagement with many companies will be a great tool for us today. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Ian Golding. Welcome to ICX. Welcome to share your thoughts and lessons with the team. And we are looking forward for takeouts. Exciting to have you here today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Steve, for such a lovely, kind introduction. I really appreciate it. The only thing I don't appreciate is seeing the nice warm weather behind you. So just to try and compete, I'm pretending that I'm in Kenya with my beautiful background. And Kenya is a country that I have visited many times before. Yeah. In fact, it's lovely to see names that I recognize, friends that I've made on my previous visits to Nairobi. So it is a real pleasure to be with you all this morning. Now, could I ask Angela or Purity to allow me to share my screen, please? Because, fabulous. I am very excited today to be able to share with you my thoughts on this subject. And my objective for today is to give you all some food for thought as you continue to have your roundtable discussion once I've finished rambling. And those of you who have heard me speak before know that I do ramble to a degree, but I'm, as I say, very much hoping that what I say to you will stimulate many thoughts. Whether you agree with what I say or not is a different matter, but that's almost part of the objective of the next 20 minutes or so, is that I want to, as Steve rightly said, by Angela, if I would contribute to today. And I was given the name of the topic, customer inclusion. I have to be totally honest with you. I pulled a face to myself, that is, no one else could see it, because I saw the words and I thought, what is this? And I'm being very sincere with you, because to me, I thought, is the customer inclusion, do we really need another terminology to help us understand the relationship with the customer? And so let me just expand on why I'm saying that to you. I have said for many years that the world continually gets excited about creating different terminologies to describe the relationship with the customer. And many of you will know that the three terms you see on the screen are the three most commonly used terms to describe that relationship: customer service, customer experience, customer centricity. But there are other terminologies. Lots of organizations now talk about customer excellence. Others talk about customer success. I do a lot of work in the Middle East where they talk about customer happiness. And so is customer inclusion just another terminology to add to all of the others? Because what I argue is that whilst all of these terminologies have a place, the three most important terminologies to understand are the three that we see on the screen. Because ultimately, if an organization wants to develop long-term relationships with customers that deliver sustainable growth. In other words, a return at the definition of inclusion. What do those words actually mean? The action or state of including or of being included within a group or a structure. That's the Google definition of the word inclusion. And again, if we think about this, customer centricity, is it doing that? Is it including customers within your group, within your structure? If I remind you that simple definition of customer centricity, every time you do anything, you think and act in the interests of the customer. Now, to a degree, there is an overlap, but it isn't necessarily exactly the same thing. Because as Steve rightly said in his introduction, what most organizations are doing today is not behaving in a customer-centric manner. They are behaving in a business-centric manner, doing things in the interests of the organization, not in the interests of the customer. And so too often we are doing things to customers rather than with them, incorporating them into the decision-making itself. So not just thinking and acting in the interests of the customer, but involving our customers in that thinking and in that acting. And another question I want to pose to you, there are lots of questions. Is customer inclusion new? Is what I've just said anything different to what organizations have been doing for years? Because there is another term that I want to share with you, a term that many of you will have come across before, that actually presents the argument that customer inclusion isn't new. It is something that organizations have been doing, but they've just been thinking about it using different words. And those words are co-creation. Not C-creation, sorry, that's a typo in the headline of this slide, but co-creation. Co-creation concept that is well understood customer. So what I want to propose to you today is that customer inclusion is absolutely the right thing to focus on, but you should also consider it as a different form, a different way of describing co-creation. And what you need to consider is going forward, how can you better co-create experiences with your customers that deliver value to both you and your customer themselves? Because one of the reasons why, having made a face initially, when I saw the term customer inclusion, when I thought about it more deeply, I then started to smile, is because I think it is a brilliant theme for you to have this year. Because it is absolutely right for us to be thinking much more deeply about how we can engage and involve the customer in the conversations that we're having to evolve experiences in 2021 and beyond. Because again, as both Lois and Steve brilliantly said in their introductions, we're living still in an incredibly challenging time. The end of this pandemic is a long, long way away. We have no idea what's going to happen this year. There are many people who are still in the pit of despair. There are others who are very excited about what's happened. It's enabled them to rethink, repurpose, and to become even more successful. But there is no doubt that we are now in a much greater sense of emotional relevance than ever before. And it is absolutely vital that going forward, we are focusing more and more on the emotional connection that we're making with our customers. Ever since Facebook introduced their new emoji, and Facebook is not obviously the be-all and end-all, but that was a brilliant example of thinking more deeply about the way human beings are interacting with each other. Because it isn't just a case of like or dislike. It isn't just a case of love or not love. It is a case of us being able to demonstrate that we truly care about each other, not just as individuals, not just in our private or personal lives, but that we really care about the relationship between us, our organization, and the customers that we exist to serve. Because as I've already said, we are in such a heightened state of emotion that we are still, as human beings, going through extreme stress. What you see on the screen is something I've been sharing for the last 2 years, because I've wanted to allow people to understand that we deal very differently with radical change. And this pandemic has brought about radical change in a way that no one really quite anticipated. And at the beginning of this pandemic, a year ago, we're coming up to a year that this has really transformed our lives. Human beings were thrust into it was really very extreme. And organizations had to adapt to that. Some did, some didn't. Some did it very well, some did it very badly. But as this period has continued, still as human beings, we just don't know what's going to happen. We can't see light at the end of the tunnel. And if we're going to be able to give our customers hope, and not just our customers, by the way, but our employees as well, we need to find a way of getting their emotion to start working towards the right-hand side of this curve. And there is no better way of getting emotion to move to the right-hand side of this curve than by including customers in the conversations we're having, including our employees in the conversations we're having. What does the future look like? Will we ever go back to offices? Will we ever shop in the way that we did before? Rather than deciding ourselves and doing it to the customer, it would make a lot more sense to involve our customers and our colleagues reasons why a strategy of customer inclusion is absolutely the right thing. But just because it's the right thing doesn't mean your organization will be open to doing it. And that means all of us have to work even harder to influence the organizations we work in and with to understand why inclusion of customers and employees isn't necessarily optional. Again, those of you who've heard me speak before will know that I'm very passionate about describing the three component elements that make all experiences: the functional, the accessible, and the emotional. The functional component represents your products and your services. Historically, that is what most organizations have differentiated on. The accessible component represents how easy it is for your customers to interact with your products and services. That accessible element of the experience has been increasingly important over the last 5 years. But the last 12 months have seen accessibility become even more critical. The easier it is for your customers to interact with your products and services, the more likely it is that they will continue to interact with you. But the reason I wanted to share this with you, the reason that I'm very passionate about sharing this slide, is because the most important element of the experience, and it's always been the most important, is the third one, the emotional element. Because the emotional element represents the way the experience makes your customer feel. And the reason that that is the most important element of the three is because the way the experience makes your customer feel is what they are most likely to remember. And customers will remember one of three things from all experiences they have. They will remember very good things, they will remember very bad things, or they will remember nothing at all. And it is actually that third emotional outcome that is the worst, typically, of the three, because if they remember nothing about their experience, it means there's no emotional connection between you and your customer. However, because of the current situation, it is customers remembering their experience for the wrong reason that is likely to have a much more damaging, sustainable effect on your organization. The situation we find ourselves in now, the most recent similar, not quite the same, but analogy for this is the financial crisis from 2008, which affected everyone around the world, even though it was largely created in the US and in Europe. And one of the problems that that financial crisis created was a huge lack of trust. Consumers lost belief in organizations to do the right thing. And so they started to remember experiences for the wrong reason. What you need to ask yourselves is, what is it that your customers are remembering about their experiences with you? And could including them in the conversations that you're having help you to get a better handle of how they're feeling today, so you can find better ways of changing that emotion going forward? At the end of the day, what we must never forget is that customer experience is all about human interaction. My favorite quote of all time is from the marketing guru Simon Sinek, who says that 100% of customers are people, 100% of employees are people. If you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And it is still so very, very true. And Steve, in his introduction, used the word empathy. And I think there is no better way of summing up the power of customer inclusion than recognizing the effect that empathy can have on the financial performance of your organization. Because if you are going to focus on customer inclusion, that will give you the ability to empathize with your customers. Because the only way you can include them is to be thinking about them and listening to them and what they're telling you. And there is a direct connection between your ability to empathize with your customers and financial performance. And this is why. Because the better able you are to empathize with your customers, the more likely it is you will turn your customers into fans, advocates of your organization. Fans become loyal. Loyal fans come back to you more often, buy more things, and tell others about you. And if they come back to you more often, buy more, and tell others about you, you'll make more money. This is really not complicated. And this is why including your customers in the activities that you are advancing this year, in understanding what's going wrong, in determining ways that you could change the way they feel, why wouldn't you want to do that? And so I just want to share 3 examples with you of organizations who have used methods like this to massively support this whole principle of including, involving customers in the business. As Chip Bell says, giving them the ability to put skin in the game, so to speak. Unilever have been doing this since 2010. It comes back to what I said earlier. Is this really new? I would argue it isn't. It's been around for some time. And what Unilever did in 2010 is they launched this platform called Open Innovation, where they actually encouraged people to submit responses to different challenges that the world was facing. And as you can see, 60% of their research projects involve external collaboration from customers all around the world, telling them their ideas, their thoughts on how to address the challenges. DHL involves customers in workshops to find different ways to improve the experience. Again, very, very simple way of bringing this principle of customer inclusion to life. And when you think about this from a product perspective, because yes, we need to focus on the end-to-end experience, but there are lots of examples of customer inclusion when it comes to product development. Coca-Cola is just one example of that. Nike have been enabling customers to co-create for many, many years as well. These are just 3 of many examples around the world of where brands are prepared to bring customers into the room. Again, it's brilliant to hear that ICX are championing the discipline of customer journey mapping. There is absolutely nothing to stop you from bringing your customers into the room and co-creating the customer journey with them. Listen to them. Allow them to tell you from the horse's mouth what they like, what they don't like, and what you could do to better deliver the journey that would have a greater impact on their needs, wants, and expectations. That is a form of customer inclusion, a form of co-creation. So to bring my rambling to a conclusion, 5 things that I'd encourage you to focus on going forward. And in the interests of transparency, the 5 things I'm going to share with you, I have been preaching about for the last 12 months. So this is still the case as we continue to move into the middle of 2021 and beyond. Everything I'm about to tell you reiterates the importance of human connection, bringing customers and employees together for the benefit of the organization, the customer, and the employee. The first thing, be very, very clear with regards to the direction your organization is going in. We're in such an uncertain world. Do your customers really even know the direction you're going in? And do your employees know the direction you're going in? I have mentioned the employee many times in the last 20 minutes or so, and that may or may not surprise you. If nothing else, the last 12 months have demonstrated just how important the relationship is between the customer experience and the employee experience. And the most customer-centric organizations in the world recognize that the way they treat their people is the way their people treat their customers. So if you want to even attempt to have a focus on customer inclusion, you must first ask yourselves, are we including our employees? Because you may actually want to start with a focus on employee inclusion before you even involve your customers. To be able to focus on customer inclusion, you have got to give your people time to think. A downside of the pandemic is that we have become even more focused on the delivery of tasks, getting stuff done. But that focus on tasks and measuring internally focused KPIs, metrics, has stopped many people from thinking. Don't think, just, hit your target. If we don't give our people time to think, they will not be able to accommodate this principle of customer inclusion. But at the same time, we have got to listen. Customer inclusion can only become a reality if your organization is prepared to listen. Listen to what your employees say, listen to what your customers say, so you then do something with it. Unfortunately, there are too many examples globally of organizations capturing information, feedback, insight from customers, and they do nothing with it. And that is more damaging than not capturing it all. So if you're not going to, not you personally, but if your organization is not prepared to listen and then act, this whole principle of customer inclusion will not become a reality. And that's one of the reasons why I keep reinforcing the principle of closed loop feedback. Closed loop feedback in itself is a form of customer inclusion. Getting information from them, understanding what the problem is, addressing the problem, and then feeding back to the customer what you've done. There is no better demonstration of what customer inclusion means than closed loop feedback. We have all experienced some challenging times over the last 12 months. I know that it isn't often that you get rain in Kenya, although I have been in Nairobi when it's been very heavy rain. But despite the gloom, there is a lot to be positive about. The simple fact that customer inclusion is your theme for the year, I think, is a wonderful thing. There is a greater acknowledgement that the impact of human interaction is more and more important. And it doesn't matter how digitally enabled we become, we still need to understand the relationship between human beings. And we need that digital technology to better enable it. We cannot do business without humans. And if we don't include our customers in the decisions we make going forward, the likelihood is we will make the wrong decision. By doing what's important to the business, we will completely misunderstand what might be important to the customer. I hope you found that interesting. As I say, I hope that has sparked many thoughts and questions in your minds. And I do hope that that gives you a lot of food for thought as we progress to the round table. Before you get to the round table, though, I'm very, very happy to answer any questions that you might have. But I shall pass back to Lois, who is going to continue, I believe, and may well be the one who's going to grill me. I don't know. But thank you so much for listening. And I do hope that that has given you a lot to think about. Thank you very much.